Hello, North Warfers, and welcome back to a very special episode of From the Great North to Wonder Wharf, your unofficial but verified one-stop destination for bento box information. It is just me tonight, but we do have two very special guests. Fresh off Season 5, Episode 2 episode of the Great North, episode of the Great North, we have Anthony Gioe and Nick Mandernach, the authors or the writers of that episode. Hello, gentlemen.
What's up? Good to see you, Mike.
Hello.
How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having us, Mike.
Thanks.
I love saying authors, by the way. That makes me feel
I know
way
that,
better.
that seems very appropriate. As you can tell,
I love it.
I tried to freestyle the intro and I was like, "Fuck."
Oh
That
no,
was
I
great.
love it.
No, I feel amazing already.
I feel distinguished. I feel distinguished. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what we do here.
I'd like for you to talk to my parents.
Accomplished authors.
give me some credibility.
Yeah, no, let me write your IMDb pages. They write screenwriters and telewriters.
Oh no, authors.
Authors, baby.
So we have some couple softball questions that we always like to ask our guests. And Nick, you've been on here before, but we're gonna ask you again because it's been a minute.
Yeah, totally.
But Anthony, we'll start with you. Softball question: where did you grow up, and like what kind of childhood did you have? Was it like a very imaginative childhood? Did you run around doing your own little plays and skits? Well, how did you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up in central Indiana. I was born in Chicago. All of my family and sports allegiances are Chicago-based. That's where most of my relatives still are.
That's rough as a Bears fan right now.
I know. I don't think I realized when you're living at the '90s Bulls, you just as a child, you just think this is just how things go, and then it's not. It's not. It's truly once in a lifetime. But at 10, I thought, yeah, this will go on. Michael Jordan will play forever, right? But yeah, I grew up in central Indiana. It's just a suburb north of Indianapolis. In terms of just like creative outlets as a kid, I think a lot of it was informal. I think I was a very diligent, kind of high achieving student. So I was on a very academic track through most of college. I studied economics at Notre Dame, and I just kind of discovered this writing and pursuing comedy late in college. But to like rewind a little bit, growing up, it was all there though. Like I remember when my cousins would when I'd stay over there or they'd come over to stay with us for the holidays. So one's a couple years older than me and one's a year younger than me, both boys. And when it was bedtime, we were suspiciously excited to go to bed. And it was because we would put on these elaborate storytelling shows, and we literally called it the show. And it was an improvised, you were making it up on the spot, stories about other relatives in the family. And then other times it would be maybe neighbors that we'd encountered or whatever it might be. And we kind of created this world over the years of the show. And I hadn't dawned on it until recently that like, I was like, oh my God, like I ended up doing improv for many, many years. And I actually started when I was like 9 or 10. And I was just kind of reminiscing with my cousins about that recently.
No, that's awesome. I mean, you never realize that, like when you're a kid and you're doing your fun little plays, like, oh no, that's actually improv that I've been doing this whole time. Or this is creative writing that I've been doing this whole time, not just these funny little jokes that you think is nothing, but in the grand scheme of things, like kind of put you on the path to where you ended up today.
Yeah, and I never thought that would be applicable to my life in a financial way. Like never. I really did think there was like a clear path, at least in terms of just like traditional path. Like I understood how someone could play a professional sport. I was not going to, but that seemed more attainable just theoretically than writing for television or film. 100%.
The tricky thing is, Gio will only pitch stories about his family, his relatives. They'll be like, no, this is the Tobins. He's like, no, this won't work. Because this won't work.
No,
Call
this
them
is the
whatever you want. These are the
Geos.
Geos, yeah.
These are the
Which I assume is the next short that you will be
The next-
filming. Yeah.
Everyone's clamoring for the Tobin's new neighbors, the Geos.
What about yourself, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in Phoenix, and then until I was 10, I lived in Hemet, California. I hope this lines up with the last episode. It would be kind of eerie.
I'm gonna cut back to him. He's like, he wasn't even from California.
But it's funny. I was talking about that. Like I had done a stand up for the talent show for my first grade talent show. That was like my so
I don't think I
I've been
knew
doing
that.
Yes, I one of my jokes. This was what 90s or so, but one of my jokes was so I was just in the bathroom and I stepped on a puddle in front of the urinal. It turns out vanilla ice melted. That was one of my that was a nice.
No, that was
That was in front of an entire in front of an entire auditorium of polite kids. But I was also like. I loved horror. I loved writing horror. I had one of those old like early word processors, but I would write, and this was not comedic. This was like probably around the same time I was doing non-comedic horror stories. And I remember my mom reminded me of one, which was again there was no comedy to this. It was a mummy that would kill drivers who didn't use their turn signals. Because my mom had expressed frustration with that, so I was like, "Well, guess what, Mom? Like, I'm coming for you." So I would like kind of do these like stories on some rotting word processor somewhere.
For all those cars in ancient Egypt that
Yes.
didn't use it. Yeah, okay,
right.
Why would he care? Exactly, it would be so abstract to this mummy. It would be so beyond his comprehension what a car was to begin with, much less the etiquette around a car, which would seem like maybe a god to this mummy.
Right.
I could go on. What the hell was I thinking?
It makes sense. It makes sense when you really break it down. Don't let go of that dream though. Write that in.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Nick, you're an author. You're an author.
Yes, you're right.
I don't know if you heard the top of the show.
You're
here.
right.
You're a damn author.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Put on your ascot and get your pipe and let's act the part here. Anthony, so you had mentioned that as a kid, the entertainment industry at large kind of seemed like a pipe dream. Like, how do I get there? That doesn't seem like anything possible. At what point did it kind of click for you? Like, hey, maybe this is a thing.
So I met a guy who I'm still great friends with. One of my best friends, Joe Quazala. Shout out Joe, amazing stand-up, a sketch comedian. I met him. We ended up. So I ended up checking out. One thing I should say about Notre Dame, and I'm guessing this is still true. One of the least funny places on earth.
Okay. Not where I thought you were going, but yeah.
A pretty stuffy place. I hope that it's grown, but when I was there, at least, it didn't have a ton of outlets, and there was a short form improv group that we had gone and checked out, and I had met Joe through that, but never. We were like kind of bonded over like, oh, this isn't quite what we want to do. Like not quite up our alley. And so we started just to kind of meet and hang out. And one of these other friends that I met through Joe had taken one class at Second City over the summer, probably like a teen class. And he became kind of this guru that we would then try to put some version of for no one like improv scenes together in like a rented out like study space or something like that. Again, never did a shit show for anyone, but that's a long-winded way to say Joe like was talking about this stuff about pursuing these things like whether it was he ended up going to actually like study at Second City and so then that kind of intersected with around my junior year, I was like on track to do this econ major, and I could not jump the track because then I could not have, I was on scholarship. I could not afford to add another year. And so I had some like very few elective spots, and I would find creative like ways to fill in those electives. So I took like a fiction writing class. I took an acting. Shout out to my very supportive acting professor, Siri Scott, who uh, took an acting class, and it just all started to feel more tangible. And
Mhm.
then I knew someone who was moving out here and around graduation, and was going to pursue some of this stuff, and they needed a third roommate, and I had this is I had worked in college, and then I had a few like savings bonds that had from my first Holy Communion that had reached maturation.
Okay, adult.
Yeah. And so, like, much to the surprise of my parents, I was like, I think this is something I want to do. And, they were pretty reticent. I still think, like, again, I would love if you talk to them. Because I think
Yeah.
there's still a little like, what is going on? But it's been a pretty long time now since I've been out here.
Well, this is a fun way to let you know that actually, no, they're not. They're not.
Mom. Uh, and so yeah, I that was kind of my path into to realizing it. It was certainly, but uh, it wasn't like an epiphany. It was a lot of tenuous, like, am I should I not do this? When I got out here, it took me even like well over a year before like signing up for a UCB class. I was very timid about it because I never really had any formal uh, performance experience or anything like that. So it was a lot of kind of like I'm kind of doing it, but I'm not kind of doing it. But I worked at a law office for a while when I first moved out here, and then at a production company. So it kind of it almost like along the way there was like little moments of permission and like maybe I can do this, but um I say the biggest thing was moving out here, and that was looking back. I don't know if I would give myself the advice to do.
At what age was that?
That would have been when I graduated. So I had just turned 22. Yeah,
Okay, that's the time to do it. Yeah.
yeah. When your confidence comes from your naivete.
Now, I remember I was 21 and I had just gotten out of the Marine Corps, and I was like, "Oh, the fucking world's at my feet. Everything's mine."
Yeah,
And then, like
yeah,
2 weeks later, I was like, "I'm back in Virginia working at a movie store because nothing worked out."
yeah.
But I mean, yeah. How about yourself, Nick? Well, did it always seem like something? Yeah, I can do this, or was like, that's a pipe.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't have any relatives who do anything close to a creative career. So I thought that was, that always felt odd. But we moved from Inland Empire Hemet to Los Angeles. My dad managed a Sears store in Los Angeles, so I started going to more of the comedy scene stuff in LA and stuff like, and kind of like Gio said, it was like a lot of smaller recognitions. And then when I went to college at Cal State Northridge out here, and just on weekends we were all broke college students, so we would just go to the free ASCAT shows at UCB. And I was like, oh, interesting. That had just started up. That was like, I think we were probably there within a year of the theater opening. So yeah, so that off of that we started to understand, and then started doing comedy classes that way. So I started taking classes. I was probably about right around like 20 or so while I was in college.
By my decision making, Nick, you seeing that ASCAT show, you would have been my guru. Like
That's
that would have been that would have been enough for me to be like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. Here's my life plan.
Yes.
So I guess the next question I have, and it's for both of you, and as somebody who's very pragmatic, like, how do you put aside the notion that, like, hey, maybe I have a job, maybe I have a decent job, but it's not what I want to do. This is what I want to do, and there's no guarantee this is going to work out. How do you kind of put all that doubt aside? And maybe it is the early 20s, and you're like, you know what, fuck it, I got time to screw this up. But how do you turn off the pragmatic side and say, you know what, I'm going to try this?
Oh, good question. I mean, I'll say for me, it was just a miserable 10 years to get paid. So I had a day job.
Yeah.
After I graduated, I had a day job. I would do classes and shows at night. and then I, trying to, but the balance was impossible. It was just, and then the money didn't work out. Gio and I, at some point, I think we had started doing a one act play show that was going well, and but at some point we had to be like, hey, we're going to stop working during the day. We're just going to coach. We're going to set aside that time to just write together as if it's our job, and then coach outside of time. But it was just a lot of financial precarity. It's always I would wake up just with a panic attack every morning. I would just wake up. I would just go stiff. I'd be like, what am I doing? Just when I would remember my life, I'd be like, what? So I was never able to do that. I was never able to put that aside.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah. If it isn't obvious already, I'm not the most laid back. I'm not. It doesn't come easily. But, folks that can, God bless them. But like, I feel like we are still very pragmatic. In a lot of ways, and I think it's just kind of those small wins along the way are hopefully, like, I think those are probably little moments of validation, and I think also just meeting and trusting Nick and like having a friendship and a working relationship that it's kind of validating within itself, where it's like I trust Nick, I trust his taste, I trust his decision. But I think that we both felt that early on as we got some more opportunities. And so I think that's also just a very fortunate thing that doesn't come along all the time. So
yeah, I got to figure it helps to meet a like-minded person who's on the same path to kind of push each other and say, hey, no, I got you, you got me.
Totally.
We're going to do this. Let's both fail or both succeed.
Yeah.
I think so.
I think it helped with accountability too. I mean, I definitely, in our 20s or whatever, it was just like, I think just being like having a buddy to be like, okay, I told you I was going to have these pages done by tomorrow. I'm seeing him at 9 a.m. I just have to have whereas I would let myself down daily. So that definitely, I mean, it just kept, we were much more productive together for sure.
Yeah. No, it's much like the show we run here. Is like, I'll let myself down 10 times out of 10, but if JB needs something, I'm like, fuck, I got to bend over backwards. I'm not going to let JB down.
It's a good thing to know about yourself, I think. And I think there are people who that is like a trait where if that's motivating for you, I think if you're a listener that's motivating for you, that might be a reason to get into a partnership, to be like, oh yeah, I notice I show up for other people, and that's like that's a lot of energy there and very motivated. That might be a good something to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it worked for me like at the gym, like if you have a gym buddy, because I bought like everybody.
Yeah, totally.
During the pandemic, I bought a bunch of stuff for the house, and I didn't pick up.
Totally.
I gained weight. I knew nothing. So
no,
I totally. Yeah, I think that's a great analogy. I think the best shape of my life, which is not currently right now, was when I had my gym buddy, 100%. My buddy Jason in college. It was just like, oh, he's going, I'm going. I think that's a great comparison.
Yeah, but then the problem is they get way better at it than you, and then you have to catch up. And like, this fucking benching 250. I'm like, nah, we're curling 40s right now. Shut
Mike, you'll notice why Jason and I are not writing partners. He got too strong.
He's too strong.
He got too strong.
Yeah, you're like, no, we're drinking protein shakes. So what the fuck's a protein shake, man? I thought we were just walking. and the closer you get to 40, the harder it is. It's not fun.
Yeah.
But so, at what point do y'all's paths cross?
We're at UCB. I think we would do. I ran a indie show.
Oh, and Nick, is he getting choppy on your end, Mike?
Oh, Nick, yep. Or he's doing a dramatic pause. There we go.
How's that? Am I back?
Yes, yeah, you're back.
Awesome, thank you. So yes, I ran a indie improv show, which just like independent groups would come through, and so we would have like 5 teams come, and I saw Gioe there. I think we probably got to know each other in that scene. Gioe at the time, by the way, was on a team with my future wife, also was on the same team. Oh, so nice. Mongrel was a very important group. So yeah, that's probably how we got to know each other.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we got to know each other along those lines. And then shortly after that, UCB has, I think they still do, like certain like regular house teams called Herald teams, which is like a type long form. Folks, I don't aren't listeners aren't aware. It's like a type of long form improv. And we were then put on the same team by the theater. So I think maybe that also then we're just kind of spending more and more time with each other, and yeah, we then realized you could do the greatest improv show ever. 100 people might see it. Maybe three of them mentioned it to their coworkers the next day. It's the returns are extremely diminishing, and so we were like, let's. This is fun, but this is not a career path.
Now,
Right.
what year is this at this point?
What would you say? Nikki and I were put on a team in 2013.
I would say probably
Okay.
about 10, 11 years. Yeah. And so this would be, and then, yeah, that's, I mean, no, this would probably be about like, yeah, maybe 14 years ago then, like, like something around there. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we were then put on a team
Something
together.
like that.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then so that we decided, around that time in Los Angeles, there was, the UCB was opening a second space that was much larger, and they needed more programming.
Mhm.
And we just approached the, creative leadership there. We were like, hey, we think that there's like an amazing group of folks like in our community that we're doing a lot of improv and sketch, but a lot of us, it seems like, are wanting to pursue like narrative acting and writing, and so we pitched
Mhm.
the idea of doing a night of one act plays once a month, which we ended up doing that show for about 3 years. Is that right,
Something
Nick?
like that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say, another sort of aspect of that, like, I think probably the correct path would have been, we do improv and then we would have written a sketch show and then, and we would have formed a live sketch show. But when we tried to write sketch, something about it just wasn't authentic to us. It just
Mhm.
wasn't clicking. So, we were like, that's the kind of what we realized, like, oh yeah, we wanted to do more narrative work. And that, I think doing a one act play was something that was not happening a lot in that, in the comedy community at that time. So it was a way to kind of, by being more authentic, I think we did something that people hadn't been seeing.
Yeah, and I think back to what Nick said as well, like it created this monthly accountability. Like
Mhm.
we had to
Yeah.
write a new one act. Yeah. So
Mhm. Would you always do a fresh show? Because obviously, I can only imagine pitching an improv show to folks like, "Hey, come watch our improv show." Is kind of hard from time to time. So you wouldn't always get the same folks. Would you sometimes say, "Hey, we can just recycle this because nobody's seen this,"
What would
or
we
would
do?
you hold yourself accountable and say, "No, we need something new"?
For a
I think that,
while, yeah.
yeah, go ahead, Nick.
No, please, no, please, please.
I think that we would do often a new one, but I think sometimes we would feel like if there was an opportunity to, like, we were like, oh, it was like not quite. We would discover maybe in putting it up
Hmm.
that we wanted to change something. We would
Hmm.
maybe run it again a couple months later or something
Hmm.
like that, or yeah. Nick, what's your memory of
I think
it?
that's exactly it. I think, and especially I think by the end when we were also doing TV writing while doing that, I think we tended to put it up twice.
Yeah.
I think by the end. So I think at the top we would do once a month. We got a lot of material, but I think you're right. If we were like, oh, this moment, the audience sometimes would tell you, oh,
Hmm.
this moment wasn't true. We needed something else there,
Mhm.
Hmm.
or we overplayed this. It turned into just a sketch where they kind of maybe wanted something to change.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I think yeah, that was a big part of it. We learned a ton too. I mean, just being able, just putting up like narrative stuff that had to be funny and also have some like sustaining heart to it. To go like from a 3-minute scene we would do in improv to a 10-minute like one act play was
Hmm.
a that was a big educator for us.
Were you putting any of these early shows online?
No,
We
I
have
don't think so. We recorded some, but like just
Mhm.
for ourselves to have to maybe look back at. But I don't think we ever put anything online, did we?
we recorded one as a short film. It's called
Oh
World's
yeah, we ended up.
Finest. Yes.
Yes,
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 I want
yes.
to
Yeah.
get. Oh,
Okay.
okay. So you guys have like 3 shorts listed. I was only able to find one. And it's World's
Yes.
Finest. and god damn it, is that thing hilarious. But we'll get to
Oh,
that in a
thank
second.
you. Awesome, great. Yes, but that's
yeah,
it. But that
so
leads into the
yes.
origins of
Okay.
World's
Yeah,
Finest.
so yeah, we did end up like producing and filming a filmed version of them. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, then that's a nice little segue. At what point did you want to start filming these shorts, or turning them
Yeah.
into shorts, like finally filmed mini
I think
films?
a little bit like this the same reasoning of, only so many folks can just come and see a live show. And we felt like that, as we workshopped maybe one or two of them, that they felt particularly strong. And we had friends coming out who at the time, were interested in maybe directing something. So some guys that Nick and I had both worked with over the years that we met through Funny or Die.
Yep.
Jack Bishop and Justin Nijam, like we ended up connecting with them, and we, after doing World's Finest on stage, which we had done, I think maybe a 2 or 3 times. I think we even did like a one-off of it at a different show. We felt like it was in a good enough shape to then put into like a film production.
Sorry, I heard this big old bang. I'm like, what the hell was that?
Oh, my guns! I've got guns over here. Sorry, I'm just shooting.
Yeah, no, I was like, would you put down the guns? We're trying to do a very professional interview here.
I'll put down the guns.
You call him an author one time and it goes to his head. It's jeez.
Yeah, I'll say, part of that too, just a little bit of a strategy wise was, we would get these off of some of the pilots we were writing and stuff. Like, we would get meetings with folks at production companies and showrunners and producers and stuff. But it was sometimes like, we needed a reason to kind of stay on the radar a little bit. Something you might meet with someone, and then like a couple years go by and you're like, oh, I guess I kind of lost that contact. So one thing that we found was when we had, we would invite people out to our place, but also when we had this film set, we would just send a short film. If it felt good to us, we would share it with folks. And then sometimes we would that might pick up a relationship, or they'd be like, oh yeah, and we were also just talking about some X, Y, and Z or something like that. So it was a way for us to kind of like re-up some of those connections.
Did it kind of feel like in the early days with you all kind of starting to do your own thing and these friends who were wanting to be writers, producers, directors, all kind of helping each other out on like the ground level kind of thing, saying, hey, you help me, I'll help you, let's put this out, you put on your resume, I'll put it on my resume, as opposed to just going out and like having to spend so much money to rent all this equipment or do all this other stuff? Did it kind of feel like a Island of Misfits toys, all of us getting together doing our thing here?
Yeah, I think we were very fortunate for just talking about World's Finest, like Jack and Justin, and then our producer who this guy Ani Pandit, who's an old friend of ours as well. It really, like, it if anyone likes it, like, I want to say, like, it's because of them. Like, they made it look very, very good, and I think that, like, they had a skill set and still have a skill set at the time that like Nick and I were writing and performing in it, but like they're really skillful, just in terms of DP directing. Yeah, so there was a bit of that, in terms of just like folks, kind of helping each other out at that time. I think that becomes more difficult the more it becomes a career, because you want to make sure people are being compensated well and fairly. And so I think that and at least in those days it did feel like, well, we're all trying, hopefully we're all getting something out of this. They can put it on their directing reel, we can show it to folks in the ways we want to. So does that sound about right to you, Nick?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think in coming up, like, part of it, like whether for improv or, talking about the indie show that a team ran earlier, I think a big part of it was making opportunities for yourself and making opportunities for other people. Like doing both of those things. So our one act play show, for instance, it was 10 minutes play. We would have 5 one acts. So for those were 4 other people that we were collaborating with at that time, who also had an opportunity to put it up, and we pooled our resources to hopefully get a good crowd out. an improv night, there would be about 6 slots. One team would take one of those. That's 5 slots. Opportunities for other folks as well. So definitely, I think that's like a big part of success is that community.
For sure. So we've mentioned a couple of times already, World's Finest. It was the only one I could find. But how much did you all stick to the script on that, and how much was improv, if at all?
I think there was no improv. I remember Justin in particular. I think we had like it was very firm on it. We were on script for that. If you remember that too, Gio.
Yeah. I do remember it, like, and they were right. Like,
Yeah,
I think that there are sometimes if you've done something so many times, improv could feel better, but it genuinely sucked. It's just like not because it just feels novel. It feels like,
Yeah.
oh well, if you've heard something so many times, like, we've rehearsed that so many times, we put it up, a number of times. And so I think almost all of that, the stuff we use, if there was a little improvising, we ended up using uh, um the way it was written. I'll say though, then within it, there's like always a little bit of movement, and I think Nick's like incredible at this. I remember doing that, and we did that like overnight, and we had like a church space that was like in a church office that we shot that the principal's office, and I remember like Nick was so on it and had done it so many times. Every take was different, and I just remember like thinking like this is really cracking me up. So I hope people like it as much as I do.
Yeah, it's really fun. I think Jack and Justin. But my mom was the pastor of that church, so it's funny when you watch that video to know that my mom is literally, because she was literally asleep
Feet
on
away,
a
feet
pew.
away.
She was like asleep. Well, because we went like all night to get this location. So yeah. They also, I want to say the special effect at the beginning. There's a rain effect on this window, which is again, it makes this an incredible kind of like Chicago feel or whatever it is. But that was just like Jack and Justin had just like rigged up a PVC pipe and just like drilled holes in it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like how they elevated the quality of it was really amazing.
Yeah, so I asked the improv part only because one particular scene where you're kind of explaining, I'm just going to use a line, bees fuck flowers. I believe that was the line. And then you do this for like 3 or 4 beats. I was like, oh, that's got to be something they just ran with. But that was hilarious.
Oh, that's so nice.
And then you're like, bees don't have sex with flowers.
Yeah.
And then there was one line that, while so depressing, had me cracking up in my office. You asked Anthony, like, how much money did you lose? And you were like, $14,000. Like, that's half a teacher's salary right there. And I was like, oh, that's so depressing, but so true. And it's hilarious. How long did it take for that whole thing? Because obviously you wrote the script. I assume it's punched up version of what you did on stage. But how long did it take from script to screen to do that whole little 7-minute bit?
Yeah, I mean, we had that's one we did twice on stage. We felt there was something there, but we kept kind of pushing it, and kind of hearing what bits were working, what bits were flat. When it got repetitive, when it felt like we were just saying, and we needed like almost like there's. It's kind of funny to rewatch it because the we had like maybe just learned the idea of a status switch. And so in that, when you watch that video, I mean, if for people who are like kind of learning to write, there's maybe too many just constant.
It swings. You learn something so insane. These are the most unhinged people in this, let alone county, maybe state. Like it's just they're so unhinged. But I think you're right. Yeah, I think we were having a lot of fun. Like maybe almost like formulaically, like with, okay, it's time for the status to flip again. We also tend to, and this is true to this day, we really gravitate toward like we love very small almost like pettiness, like very like stakes could not be lower. This is a chocolate fundraiser being replaced by a healthy trail mix fundraiser. It's like it's really almost like purposely boring, but we love like playing that like it's
Mhm.
life or death. And maybe could have been ended in death in this script.
I love how earnest you were that it was a fundraiser and not a fundraiser.
Yes,
I was like,
yes,
That's right. I
right.
forgot about that. Yes.
it's so silly, but yeah, that whole thing. I wish I could have found the other two. They had like links on Vimeo, but then it's like videos taken down.
Yes,
So
yes.
like,
These are one of those. It's like Ian Brennan directed one of them, who was like the creator of Glee and did like the Jeffrey Dahmer, like so he's kind of got it's kind of funny to think of him working with us in that way. It's like but yeah, but they were a lot of fun, and I do think a lot of it was just like combing and recombing through. So yeah, we would rehearse, put it up, really watch our tape back, redo it, put it back up, and then I think we put it up a third time for our best of, and I think we actually put, and then people had seen it, and so we performed at another show. So there was just, but every time I think we were trying to push it a little bit, or just be hard on it. I think we've always been very hard on ourselves in that way, in a fun, which makes it more fun, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Now,
I agree.
with the three shorts, we have House of Greeting Cards, World's Finest, and Coming Out. Look like they were all released in 2016 as far as the shorts go. Were they filmed back to back to back, or had it because 3 shorts in a
Yeah,
year?
that
I
would
mean,
make
after
sense.
editing and stuff, yeah,
House
takes a
House
while.
of That's right. Yeah, I think
House
that
of
that
Greeting
makes
Cards
sense.
is like very much. Nick, are you going to say what I think you are about House of Greeting
Yes.
Cards?
So House
It's
of Greeting
very
does
much
not.
of 2016. This will give you a picture of the
Yes.
internet in 2016.
So we had got approached. Funny or Die had partnered with
Samsung.
with Samsung
Oh,
to
okay.
Yeah.
give some funds to like comedians for the Milk platform.
It was called Milk. I
It was
mean, this
called Milk.
really is the state of the industry, like just kind of this sort of mid to late aughts, like
Yeah.
Mhm.
people are. Where is this money coming from? Is any of this
No.
solvent?
So
Mhm.
We come to
yes.
find out none of it is solvent.
Nope.
So we had put it up. We had our release date. We had shot it, filmed. Ani Pandit again, like had like directed, produced it. We put it all together. We put it up like on a Monday night, and then Tuesday morning we get a call. They go, "Milk is folded." So they so
For context, is Milk, because I've never heard of Milk, but is it similar to CISO and how that all went down?
Yeah, so it seems like CISO, but the money is much more shrouded. So
yes.
if that's even possible, like why the name Milk? How could that?
Uh-huh.
It just
Samsung,
you can
yes.
like when you like were to you can see the boardroom and people just justifying their social media positions
Yeah.
and
Go
Mhm.
90.
yes,
Yep.
yeah,
Verizon.
it
I
was.
remember like Go 90 Verizon, like
Verizon Go
Verizon.
90, which it was called Go 90 because
Mhm.
when you watch a video, you go 90.
You would turn your
And it's
yes.
you turn
It
your
writes
phone 90
itself. Yeah.
That's right.
degrees.
So yeah, we
And
were
when you
very
have to
active.
hear that explained out loud, you know in that meeting that this person's job will not exist in 8 to 10 months.
Yes, yes. But yeah, that was very much in that era. If there was a failed platform, we had desperately pitched to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
Yes, so milk, the day it went up is the day it ended.
oy, oy, oy. I've never heard of it. Maybe there's a reason why, but yeah, I've
Yes.
never heard of Milk.
Maybe it
So,
was called milk because it expired so quickly.
Because
it
it
was
was
bad
around
as
for
soon as you bought it.
yes.
So when you all pitched yourself, and this will kind of get into your later work here, were you always pitching yourself as a duo?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah. I think
Oh, go ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
we had been writing all our stuff together, and then also, and again, I'm for like writers, we also were acting in all our stuff as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
That was like kind of like a part of it. So so that was definitely what we wanted to do. I think we just and to this day, just the stuff we write is just better when we do it together. So yeah, so we were.
Mhm.
We were also in a Dodge
yeah.
van commercial together. I don't know if you remember this, Gio, that we were in a
Yeah, I do.
we were in a
Yeah,
commercial. We got paired as a duo. We had a Dodge van
we auditioned
online.
for and yeah, did a Dodge van commercial where we're we're parking a Dodge van like a honestly like a creepy white van, like the
Yeah.
like traditional.
Were
Yes.
they trying to sell the white van, this windowless white van, or?
I think they were trying to sell their van is better and less creepy and
Oh yeah, don't be like these guys, kind
crappy.
of thing.
Yeah, don't be
Yes,
like
we were
these
those guys.
fucking
You were
Yes.
those guys.
losers. Check out
Get
these
windows
loser
on your
perverts.
van. So the three shorts, did that kind of help you gain the momentum to get jobs on like Young Sheldon or I Feel Bad, or was it kind of like how did those jobs come about from where you were?
Yeah.
It may have played into it. I'm sure like it's all kind of an amalgam. I think like maybe Nick, tell me if what you think of this. Like there's a maybe a more direct line in that one of the other plays that we wrote, we did not film, but we felt like it was our one of our strongest, and so then we expanded it into a pilot. We wrote like
Mm-hmm.
a spec sample pilot,
Right.
and it was just based on like a experience in a high school marching band. Nick had like a ton of experience in high school marching band that really cracked us up. And this pilot that we wrote is basically at the time we had also been watching a lot of Friday Night Lights. I think it had maybe just been put up on streaming, so a lot of folks had more in access to it. And
Mm-hmm.
we were like, "What this football is everything to this town. What is happening with the marching band that like you would see like kind of walk by every once in a while?"
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of between that and Nick's experience, we thought there might be a world there. So yeah, basically what's going on with a marching band in a football obsessed town in the South.
Yeah. So
And that became a pilot, like kind of our sample.
we had got our reps based on that. So it would be like Legitimate Goddamn Theater, which is the one act play show. We wrote a pilot based on one of that, and then we got connected to our agent Jim Eric through doing the one act play in that pilot. So off of that, Greg Daniels read March, and we helped out. We did a mini room on Upload, which was like on Amazon, and then from that we also got read by over at Young Sheldon, and then so that was kind of but it was definitely like a line from testing out material at Legitimate Goddamn Theater, writing up a pilot if it and then we'd say oh that works how, and then we would kind of gauge the material like oh this is a big world that we've kind of like developed that feels like maybe it might be a pilot, or this is just like a very fun scene. Maybe we might just like film that on its own. So we're kind of evaluating material there, and then we Upload, Young Sheldon, I Feel Bad, and then we had met with Mike Scully off of March. He had a daughter who was in marching band, and so he kind of connected to that material. So that's how we met Mike Scully off of that.
Nice. So coming from obviously your improv show and then writing these shorts and out onto Young Sheldon and I Feel Bad, was the learning curve very steep, or did you like, well, we've already wrote spec scripts, we kind of know how that goes? Was it much different going into a TV show as opposed to doing your own thing?
Yeah. I think we definitely had a learning curve, like, how to pitch, for instance. We were lucky that we had like friends who would kind of give us tips, but like, when we went into, for instance, like went into the Upload mini room, our pitches were entire episode outlines that we just like read and you could just see people's eyes glaze over. And so one of my things that I learned is like pitching small. So people's eyes were glazed over. We had full hour-long episode that no one gave a fuck. And then like we just go, what if they switch bodies? And everyone goes, oh yeah. It's like, you just like pitch small, and then if there's enthusiasm, then you have answers to like back it up. So definitely we had to learn some like etiquette and stuff like that.
In pitch meetings, is it as simple as pitching an entire episode, or are you kind of just pitching ideas and they say, okay, now go write that and then we'll see where it goes? Or How does that happen?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it varies from show to show. Do you mean like on once you're staffed on a show, or like if you're
I,
doing
I,
your
I
own
su-
show?
yeah, I suppose like when you're already on a show.
Yeah, so it can vary show to show, like in terms of like the workflow of it. The universals that stick out to me are that, you tend to have like dedicated time at the beginning of the season. The showrunners want to hear ideas as we're kind of piling up premises and
Hmm.
seeing, which characters are being served and maybe what we want to do over the course of, we worked on serialized shows where you have to kind of think out over the course of 10 episodes
Right.
of like a season long arc, so that could affect what you come in with. And the workflow tends to be kind of you have maybe like a strong idea for the premise. You see if it gets a bit of traction, pretty quickly, if the conversation still is revolving around that idea for a few minutes, then that becomes 10 minutes. It's like, okay, this seems like there's something there. And then there's just, like we've been very, very lucky to work with great showrunners. Our most recent ones obviously are Wendy and Lizzie. And then
Hmm.
before that, we had Mike Scully and Julie Scully over um, at Duncanville, and they will like kind of start guiding towards like what they like about
Mhm.
it and whatnot. So
Hmm.
you take that cue, and then maybe you start to you'll flesh out like a one pager of like what that would look like.
Hmm.
And then other times in the room, maybe that will just go straight to, hey, let's get the board and let's like just start putting acts one, two, three, sometimes act four, depending on the show. And you'll start kind of like saying like, okay, like if it starts here and then maybe this feels like a natural act one break, and that will take us here. And those kind of highs and lows that we were talking about earlier with doing one act, I think that there is almost like a macro version of that with television structure. You just kind of have
Hmm.
natural highs and lows that fit those act breaks. So that tends to be how it goes, like that once you've pitched kind of to like the room, the cards and whatnot,
Hmm.
that tends to work into then things get more writerly, where you're sitting down and then Nick and I will start going back and forth of like
Mhm.
straight up like almost like prose outlining stuff.
Totally.
Is that
Yeah.
answer your question? Is that kind of what
Yeah. No, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
And then I guess another question I would have is when writing for a show that's kind of self-contained within each episode, like a Duncanville or a Great North, or writing for a show that has an overall story arc, um, more so to the latter, do you find the story you want to tell and see how it fits in the greater narrative, or go from the greater narrative and see what story you can tell within that?
That's a good question. I think
It's a great
probably, I
question.
mean, I think a showrunner is probably going to like guide those bigger conversations. I think like in Great North, there's like some very light serialization.
Yeah.
So we like in, Duncanville was episodic, there with, again, maybe like a slight amount. And then we've written all the way, we wrote on the unproduced third season of People of Earth, which was
Hmm.
heavily serialized,
Yep.
and so that was one where every episode had to follow the arcs, and we were kind of like piecing that out. Upload was the same thing. It was like, I think Amazon at that time had even said like they want like a 10-hour movie, like that's kind of how they pictured it. So I think for season 5, I think it was mostly like there were like a few ideas. Lizzie and Wendy kind of wanted a few shifts to happen between dynamics, had a few kind of relationship ideas of what might happen. But I think it
Hmm.
was mostly if there was a fun idea, I think we would try to make that happen.
Yes. So in 2020 to 2022, as far as our notes go here, you guys worked on Duncanville. Um, is your work from I Feel Bad, Young Sheldon, did that kind of get your foot in the door there, or like you said, you knew Mike Scully from March?
Yeah.
Was that relationship more what got you into Duncanville?
Yeah, I think March was where we got to know Scully. Our development for us has often like been a way into staffing, where you find someone and you I think we worked really well with Scully. I think the Scullys and Gio and I have a really good rapport. So we kind of had worked together enough on this development that I was like, oh, okay, these guys are not going to blow up a writer's room or something like that.
Yeah,
These are nice boys, and so so that's how we knew Scully more so than through that staffing. We had worked with them already.
Mm-hmm. And was there any shift in the way you all tackled the show, Duncanville specifically, going into animation as opposed to live action, which up until this point is what you've been doing?
I found it to be much more similar than dissimilar. I mean, certainly, like, every show I think has kind of different tonal and stylistic markers. So, for instance, we'd worked on Upload and People of Earth. These are big genre sci-fi shows. So what was possible in there was probably about equal to what might happen within a more pushed reality animated show. And Great North was much more of a grounded family comedy. That's something that you might see on like I Feel Bad or Young Sheldon. I think there was like so I think for in my experience, there on the production side, there's a lot to learn. What's fair to ask of a of storyboard artists and stuff like that's and how to connect with them and collaborate with storyboards. That the production side I think is a big part of it, and that might tweak certain parts of writing, but I found them to be greatly similar. Gio, was that your experience?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I think there's maybe like to the benefit of these companies sometimes, like this narrative that live action is so much different than animation, and in terms of the writing, and there's certainly you can kind of separate different types of animation production. Sometimes it's like what they call board driven, but by and large, a lot of the shows that you all talk about and that we watch and we know as kind of like the staples of adult animation are script driven, and the script process, I think like I've heard Wendy and Lizzie say this too. Is like I think you actually maybe do a little bit more writing in animation in just terms of that you get that many more iterations, because as the animation process unfolds, you'll see whether it's kind of like the rough animatics, like kind of those rough drawings, and then you may do some tweaks off into the writing off of that, and then you'll get the animatic, and you definitely do a rewrite off of that, and you maybe do a couple of passes off of that, or you might be getting feedback from that, and then all the way to when the color comes back in months and months later, you're definitely doing another rewrite off of that. Oh, I should even say, even before things start the animation process, you'll rewrite off of just the um, listening to the radio play, which is like kind of the rough assembly of our actors and sometimes like subbed in voices if we haven't gotten them recorded yet. And so, that compared to you'll do the table read at a live action show, you'll do that rewrite and however many iterations that is, but that's all sort of contained with we film Friday. And then when you go and film, there's maybe some rewriting on set, depending on what's needed in terms of like a lot of that's kind of we only have so much time and whatnot, kind of getting into the minutia of we're going to go into overtime or something like that. But by and large, you don't have that kind of customization in live action that you do in animation over many iterations. And so I do think there's more. Nick, would you agree, more writing in animation?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and again, it's connected to that production, but in terms of beating out the stories, I mean, and again, no matter what we're doing, it's relationship based, like finding new levels of information, finding turns, like all that. I feel is very similar, but yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. We feel very lucky that the Great North is the writing is like Duncanville covered by the WGA, and we feel like all animation writing should be covered by the WGA. That's not always the case for yeah, varying reasons, but like it's mostly because companies would prefer things to be either non-union writing or covered by the other alternative would be the animation guild, which like the disparities are unfortunately really substantial in terms of people getting paid fairly and whatnot.
Yeah, I agree. I think union coverage and production are probably are the difference, but much more so than like the on the ground like beating out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So you all are credited with 28 episodes on Duncanville. Is there any particular one that stands out to you, or your favorite one, or one that you would put on your tombstone on a loop?
um, I loved. Oh my gosh, there's one where Duncan kisses his crush Mia for the first time, and then she kind of acts like it didn't happen. I think there was one, and I think it ends with Duncan goes on a crab vessel. He like leaves for a crab vessel. But I thought there was something just about that emotion and the confusion of relationships and kind of these weird situationships that felt really fun. So that was one that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, um I have like just a very fond memory of a day at Duncanville where I can't fully remember. Nick, maybe you can help me fill in the blanks, but I think Jack and Annie, Amy Poehler and Ty Burrell's characters, the parents, they find like an '80s club like that, like they feel like they can hang out at, like they get out of the house, and it kind of becomes this kind of like place that they continue to go back to, and it's almost like a speakeasy. And it's a highly bizarre place where, yes, it's themed '80s, but seemingly Alf is alive and like in this world, and it just made me laugh so much that in that day, and it makes me laugh to this day seeing it. But I just remember just having such a great time riffing with the other writers,
Yeah.
and like just the way it unfolded felt very organic. Where it's an insane premise, but like Alf works at this bar and he's kind of an asshole to the the dad in the moment, but then we realize Alf is actually going through like a very hard time. You
He's going
overhear
through a medical
he's
crisis.
going through a medical crisis, and then like the coda of the show is Alf's leaving town. He got a big break on. It's so bizarre. I don't know if the show ever even went that bizarre beyond that,
Yeah, yeah.
but it really cracked my ass up.
Well,
So I just have a really fond memory of the day
there's just
working
that
on that.
line where like Alf, like we got the voice of Alf.
Yeah,
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 Paul
yeah, yeah.
Fusco did it.
Alf, who's gonna, but he just like at one point he just goes silent. He goes, "I'm dying, Jack." And we got the real voice of Alf. I mean, there's like those moments are so funny. We had a lot of those in our Great North episode, but there's just some that where you're just like, I mean, it's just such a fun experience. Yeah, to hear the voice of Alf say, "I'm dying, Jack."
So earnest. Just
Yes,
looking at
It's
Jack.
so earnest. Yeah, after being a complete jerk, you
Mm.
realize, oh, he's actually Alf's quite troubled.
yeah.
So before we jump into the Great North here, what did you take away from Duncanville that you would then bring into all your future gigs? What did you learn?
The Scullys were great about mentoring us in terms of like production. So like radio
Hmm.
play stuff. They when you would go into sound mixing with them, what
Hmm.
they would we would take notes for our sound mixes, and then you would hear them, and they were just hearing more
Uh-huh.
than we. So I think and they're in Animax. So I think that's one aspect of that. But they were really we're very grateful to them for bringing us into a lot of that,
Nice.
like the post production.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, Nick and I hope to run a show one day, and along the way, you do pick up on you and appreciate it's a really it can be like a very tough job, and
Mhm.
there's nothing in the job requirements that says you have to be a mentor.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
we've been very lucky, and like Wendy and Lizzie as well, and Mike and Julie at Duncanville, like really making time to like include everything's very egalitarian from like
Mhm.
pitching to like also like ownership of your episode, being a part from start to finish. Yeah, so like like yeah, we don't take that for granted because that's not always the case.
Yeah.
So that's something that I hope that we could, if we get the chance to, we can um, run a show that way where folks are. It's like a continuing education in some
Mhm.
ways.
So as writers, obviously, my knowledge of how long an episode takes is about 6 to 9 months as far as like Bob's Burgers is concerned. So that's kind of my metric and what I base everything on. When you write something and it's locked in, are you happy with it at that point, or are you always like, oh, we could have did this better, and then when you see it on the screen, it's like, oh, we could have punched that up a little more, or are you happy with it?
That was my experience, watching it a few nights. I think it's almost, in being that granular and having watched it and rewritten it so many times,
Mm-hmm.
I know it more and less than anyone. I think
Yeah.
I have a distortion on how I see it, but there were moments where I'm like, oh, I think I know how to make that funnier. Oh, I think I
Mm-hmm.
would have, done that at every stage. I think there's that voice is I accept that voice in myself.
Yeah, I feel the same. I think that you summed it up well. Where I think it's probably never completely done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
Was there anything that you wrote that was cut that from Duncanville specifically that you're like, oh man, if we could ever do this again, maybe on the Great North and morph it to fit that show? Was there anything that was cut that you really wanted?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I'm not sure that I remember any bits that
what if I
got
said I
cut.
wanted to see Alf's death on screen?
Maybe he has like a stinger at the end of the episode, cut to black and then fade in.
I went to the mat. I went to the mat for that stinger.
You pitched that on Great North. What if Alf died in that?
What if Alf died? No, hear me out. Hear me out. He
No
left
context.
the town.
No context.
He left the town of Duncanville.
What if Alf was one of the snowmen and Wolf just snapped his neck and he came out of his cave? Like,
that's good. We can redo it.
But I feel like a lot. We had a great time on, and that a lot of that was produced during the pandemic. So I mean, one, so lucky to be working on an WJ animated show during the pandemic. But how fun it was in that time when we were locked. I was just like locked in our 1-bedroom apartment, and then every Friday get to do the table reads. Amy Poehler, Ty Burrell, Wiz Khalifa. It was like it was just such a we had a really nice time on that show.
Yeah.
Did you find writing during the pandemic and doing all that much more difficult, or are you kind of like, no, that we can do this, it's fine? I mean, obviously we know they've set everything up for you guys to do it, but there is something to be said for being in the same room with a person.
I loved Zoom just because our office, we live in Los Feliz on the east side, and our office was about an hour drive there and an hour and a half back. So it saved us 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Yeah. And yeah, just having that during that time, like definitely not lost on us how fortunate it was to one, be working, but also just have that outlet, and it's very communal.
So that brings us obviously now to 2024, 2025, the Great North. You guys have now found yourself over in Bento Box, working with the Molyneux sisters, of course. We've had them on a couple times. Love them to death. They're amazing. Yeah. How did you pivot from Duncanville to Bento Box? Because at this point, Bento Box is Fox Disney's in-house animation. They do Bob's Burgers. They got Crapopolis now, Grimsburg, Great North, of course. How did you get your foot into Bento Box?
Well, we did Bento we knew them from Duncanville. So like Will, they were that was one of the last 20. I don't know if what the 20th Bento is now, but
yeah,
it's interesting what you're mentioning, which is that Bento was then bought by Fox Entertainment. That happened during Duncanville.
Yes.
So that was so things got very confusing very quickly about the ownership with that. So that's really well taken. And we'd met Joel Kohar at a New York Television Festival, years earlier. So we had a good relationship. Yeah, Will, who's the supervising director, was on Duncanville with us. So there was a relationship there. But I'll say one thing that that was really fun was Duncanville. We had a separate writer's office from the animators, and at Great North, we were on the same floor.
Mhm.
So we'd run into DeMille, who would directed
the episode. Yep.
Yeah, you would see you run into Mario, who's who was
Love
directing
him. Yeah.
different stuff. So so that was it was really fun to be in the same office as everyone on the same floor. Was really cool.
Yeah, that's huge. It's huge just to like pop in, or you just a conversation in the kitchen like becomes like, oh, like productive in this like kind of cool creative way where it's like, oh yeah, like, or a reference or something like that.
Mhm.
And yeah, and like it's also those work experiences, or like that environment, are as good as like the situation. And like they will, yeah, shout out Will Strode, DeMille Bryant, Joel, like like an incredibly friendly group of people, like
Mhm.
so talented and so friendly. And so especially coming on this, it being the fifth season,
Yeah.
you're kind of, you're new, and you don't want to, get to know folks and whatnot. And like they could not have made it more friendly and a warmer place to be.
Yep.
And that's a great segue to my next question. The show obviously is already in its fifth season, well established. It has its own language. It has its own beats. People know it. Was there not any hesitation, but any nervousness going, hey, we know our skills are good enough, but this is already established show. We don't want to screw this up.
There's definitely, I mean, there's always going to be moments, there are 88 episodes, these are 22 episodes, he uses 88 episodes. So, I had watched the show because Duncanville and Great North were kind of like, on a similar area. So we would watch each other, again, in a friendly way. So I'd seen it and I really enjoyed it. But, we'd be in the room sometimes and we'd be like, we'd mention a character. They'd mention a character and we'd be like, I think I know it. And we'd be like, oh yeah. And then Trash Can Tony eats pizza. The room goes dead quiet. They go, Trash Can Tony hates pizza. He would have, whatever, so something would like that. I would be like, oh yeah, of course. In episode, 70, Trash Can Tony says I hate pizza. Mm-hmm. But I'll say people, Drew Hanks and Jake Caston, who are do the our support staff and script supervisor
awesome.
were really, really helpful. And I think they would kind of like be guides because they knew the show so well, and they were able to bring us in. But yeah, it was, I mean, there's a lot, we watched a ton of it, but it's just like, it was, there was a lot of
it's just too much to retain sometimes.
Yeah, you realize the limits of the human brain a little bit. But yeah, I think Nick, you hit it on the head. Like very, very welcoming, and like awesome to have those guys as resources. Encyclopedic in a way. And there's also like this, like being cognizant for the show as a whole of like wanting to make sure we don't accidentally do something like it's the classic Simpsons did it, Bob's did it. You're kind of like at a point where anything could have been on the Simpsons. I maybe exist in the Simpsons.
I was saying you're very familiar.
Yeah, I might be canon. It makes me think, this is a bit tangential. Do you guys know about the Tommy Westphall universe?
Yes.
No, enlighten me.
Okay, so this is like a thing that I've become slightly obsessed with over the years, where there's a show, Saint Elsewhere. Okay. I think it was Nick, was it a spinoff of Homicide? Is that right?
I forget, that's a little, I forget what the origins of it were. But.
So Saint Elsewhere took place in a hospital, and this was, I think, in the late 80s. It was on TV, and there was a character at the very end. Okay, so there's a character, his name's Tommy Westphall. He's the son of one of the main characters. The very, very end of this series, like one of the last images, is Tommy. It zooms out from St. Elsewhere, the hospital that you've gotten to know for years, and the people that work there for years. And Tommy is looking at it at a snow globe, through a snow globe. And so you realize all of this is kind of, the implication is that it's taking place in Tommy's mind. It's like, which is it's wild. It's like more wild than the end of Roseanne.
Isn't that how Newhart ended?
Very very similar.
Okay.
Like kind of like rug pull. Yeah. And so one thing that's become fascinating, and there's like amazing like kind of infographics people have created, that because there were crossover with other TV shows like Richard Belzer's character,
Hmm.
like so that then every time there was a crossover with another show, and then you start to see that most of television in the late 80s and 90s took place in Tommy Westfall's mind, is the implication of this move.
I wonder if that's where it was either Simpsons or Family Guy. They had a crossover episode where they had Bob's, Family Guy, Simpsons, and at the end it zoomed out and they were just like little pockets of like Simpsons land, Bob's Burgers land, Family Guy land. And it zoomed out and you saw all these shows all within this contained universe. I wonder if it's a play off that.
I
Oh
wonder if it
yeah,
is a
yeah, yeah,
play
yeah.
off that.
Totally.
This is just a very quick cursory search that Tommy Westfall, off of like a fandom Wikipedia of Tommy Westfall universe, it shares. It says that his imagination has created the continuity that now spans over 1,500 films and television series.
Jesus.
His dreams go back to the 1920s. Feel free. You said at the beginning, if you want to cut anything out, if this is something you want to cut out, please feel free.
No, no. It was fun because I assume you were on a different page reading that.
Yes, I was.
So,
Yes,
so your
yes.
video froze while your voice was still going. So I'm keeping all of that in.
Nice.
That's Tommy Westfall magic, baby.
That's
No, that's hilarious. Now that I know the reference from like the Boston again. So obviously the Prince of Hyde's adventure, your first episode, or let me ask this and maybe you can't answer it. Is it the first episode for y'all from the Great North, or just the first
Yeah.
one that went into production?
This is the first one that we wrote. Both
Okay.
for both, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Can you say whether or not you've written more episodes?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
We'll also if they keep the order 512. Well, we'll start 512. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good to go. Good to go. I lost my train of thought. Thank God I can edit this. Okay, sorry. The Prince of Hyde's Adventure. Obviously, it's a playoff shows like Naked and Afraid, and shows like that. How did this story come about? And did you pull from your own personal life, or was it like, you know what, they're mountain men? Can they hack it? No, they can't. How did the story come about?
This is a Gioe. Gioe had this one.
Yeah, so before the room started, we knew we had gotten the job, and so we like to come into that first week, prepared as possible. And so we just kind of knock around ideas. And I had been watching a lot of the show alone
Okay.
over the past few years. I kind of became fascinated by it. And in particular, I was like equally fascinated with how amazing a lot of these people are with surviving. And then you would always have like once a season, someone would be talking up a huge game, and then it tended to be a guy.
Of course, of course.
100% of the time, a guy, and then like no exaggeration, like at times within an hour of being dropped off, tapping out, and it really made me laugh. And so Nick and I just kind of playing around with that idea, and what made us laugh about it, and what if just generally that just felt like it felt of the Alaskan theme. A lot of the times they are literally in Alaska for those shows. And so we wanted to make it a little smaller for Lone Moose, so that's why it's local access, and so the production's a little smaller. But yeah, so we started playing around with that, and inherently it felt like, well, Wolf would be a great person for that. And yeah, I think we pitched it the first week. It seemed to resonate. And and then we started to kind of play with, well, okay, the idea of, why that kind of became like the crux of it, is like, why it's not that he's not capable. We know that he's super capable. All the Tobins are capable of the survival of it. The X factor that he hadn't considered is that Wolf is a very social, communal, likes to be around people, and that was his Achilles heel. And then that's when I think things started to kind of stick in a good way.
Yeah,
is that about right to you, Nick?
Oh yeah, this was, I'll say, one of the I think it's one of the harder ones to break. It's interesting because it's a big first act break move. He's gone in the first act, and he's like traditionally, I think often it would be the whole episode is will he won't hear something like that, and kind of like pulling the rug. But how to then kind of like move through? I think there were a lot of rebreaks on the back three acts of this one, which was fun. It was fun to see, but it's when you're talking about what it's like to watch it, I'm like, my mind is it feels like Doctor Strange imagining a million, we've seen so many alternate paths for this one.
There was a version where he hid within the house.
Okay.
And
kind of like Parasite-ish.
Yes.
Yeah. It was like Parasite meets and we kind of used one of those shots eventually when he goes into the house to cut the wire. But we had a visual reference of Paddington 2, where that kind of dollhouse view.
Oh, okay.
And Wolf living in the walls, and you just kind of feel it was just not quite catching traction story wise, even as we rewrote it and whatnot. There was just it just felt like it was kind of stalling emotionally. I think is what kind of led to the bigger change of can we widen this out? Can we bring get the town in the mix a little more? What would really happen? Yeah.
So with as in depth as the main plot, the A story as we like to call it, how do you then create a B plot that doesn't take away from the A plot? I mean, obviously this one we have Dirt and Honeybee trying margaritas. Are you so focused on A that you're like, okay, what can we figure out for B? Are you kind of writing the two together? How does the A and B plot work?
Yeah, totally. I think a big part, we have a huge, amazing cast for this show. We have a lot of great voice talent that we want to feature. So that's sometimes one consideration is oh, are there people who in the maybe even in the scope of a 3 to 4 episode mini, are there people who have kind of who we want to see and who we want to make sure that we're getting in? So that might be part of it. Also a Ant Dirt Honeybee pairing. Sometimes pairings is another way that stories might come about. We hadn't really seen the two of them together that much, which was really fun to see the two of them bounce out. So that was one that was something that we considered for sure.
Yeah, I think, and then for this particular one, it's such a big A story. There were it was I think pretty demanding animation wise. There's some really beautiful shots in this. And those are labor intensive for sure. And our animators did an awesome job. I'm thinking when he's on the bluff and looking over Lone Moose, or the sun setting, they just really nailed it. But those aren't elements that we already have for the most part. So I think that as that takes up a little more real estate, you find that okay, this is probably going to be and this is me speaking generally, probably a smaller, quicker B story, just time wise.
So when you're writing, do you kind of write with a vision of how the final product will look in your mind, and kind of maybe not tell the animators hey, I'm picturing this, do this, or it's hey, I was kind of picturing this when I wrote it. Maybe you can kind of work that in.
I think we try to do the latter. I think it can really help in the latter. It's one thing I'm kind of realizing is whenever there's something where I'm I'm seeing it this way, and then I just assume that anyone would understand it. I realize I'm being much more solipsistic than I realize. Oh no, we work by analogy. So for instance, I think we literally say in Paddington 2.
Okay.
I think the more we can do that, just so that we're respecting their time. They're not going to, because there's so much legitimate ambiguity in so many so I think anytime we can have a visual, and the directors and Will are great about, they'll have comps for us. Are you guys thinking this thing? But also when we can kind of meet them and be oh yeah, it's this scene in blank, or this scene in blank, sometimes that can get us closer and save work all around.
And Anthony, like you were saying, there are two specific shots in this episode that are, I mean, for lack of a better term, they're just beautiful. The one where Wolf is looking out over Lone Moose, The other one being when they drop him off on the island for the first time, they kick him off the boat. He's sitting in the water, but we pull out and we see the ocean, we see the mountains, we see the sun. It's like you put it up on a wall. It's a poster. It's beautiful.
Totally.
Was that something
exciting? Yeah.
Was that something you pictured in your mind? Or was that just the art crew going crazy on it?
If I had if they literally said like sat that image in front of me and said recreate it, I would do it until I was in the grave. Like it would yeah, that's all them. I think we had him getting kicked in the chest out of the boat, but after that, anything beautiful is definitely them. And like, yeah, I'm really in awe. I was just thinking as you were saying that there were those few shots. I had not seen this. Yeah, you're allowed like reviewing on your laptop and whatnot. Just kind of see the final thing on the TV was nice and big.
Yeah,
really cool.
But yeah, I think that's such one of the things that I love and appreciate working on the show is like the nature. It's a really it's a beautiful nature show as well, and I think that I love that the artists take time to so that we enjoy spending our time in Lone Moose. They're so good at that. I'd say the two, when talking about like the visual comps that we might write in, I think the two, I think it was like, it was the Paddington 2, and then there was a kind of a fugitive-esque when Beef hears Wolf and Andrew in the woods.
Yes,
and he's like I think we said like kind of like the fugitive. I think that maybe was the other like comp. So most of it is in the direct, and then sometimes there might be like, hey, it's feels like, looks like, that might sometimes can be a way to get us on the same page.
Now, do you all get to choose or have any kind of say where the Yeti appears in the episode?
No.
Okay. It's kind of like a fun Easter egg for at least for me. Unless Nick, do you know about? Did you know about it before?
Yes. Oh no, no, just like, but no, I did not.
I actually I was watching with my partner Emma, and I was like, oh my god, Emma, and I rewound it because I spotted the. I guess I don't know if folks. I don't want to spoil where he's at, but yeah, it was. I was like excited to see him as well.
Yeah.
And maybe this is an art question, but was it your idea or was it theirs to leave Wolf with a wispy John Waters mustache? It bugged me. I was like, if you're gonna shave it, just shave it. Why
It's such a choice, right? It's like you see how quickly he's like bought into this like Khaleesi wig, this like he's rummaged out of Cheesecake's closet. Yeah, I feel like that did come up in the early sort of tone meetings. I remember one thing that like another shout out to Will and DeMille. They like on the fly, you'll start like kind of pitching some stuff and they'll have it on screen. And again, something I could not do in a million years. Like I think that Will was like, oh yeah, and like maybe there's like he keeps a little bit of it, and like it just kind of like played into the mystique of Rick Drygoods, like this cannon, this head cannon that's only for Wolf.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like that was one where you have sort of a Clark Kent Superman thing of like, oh, it should plausibly not look like him enough. Like we need to be able to see him, and then so I what they landed on to me was so brilliant. When I look at it, I was like, oh, it does. As a viewer, I'm like, it's him and it's not. It's perfect. So I love his weird little mustache, his weird little chops.
Yes,
really cracked me up. So yeah, that was one where like, oh, we're gonna have to like get this back. But yeah, just his little Khaleesi wig. It was so funny.
Such a choice to shave off 90%. Still leave the button top. Still leave that, but change your voice.
Totally.
Also, to free but still steal food is.
Yeah.
So obviously it's your first season on the Great North. Is there, and you said you have another episode in the chamber there. Are there characters that you're excited or that you were excited to write for?
Well, I'll say, we were talking about the professional high of getting the voice of Alf to say I'm dying, Jack. Another one of those was Will Forte came in to do the table, like these are in person now. So he came into the table of this and we're huge Will Forte fans from, obviously like, SNL, that was like very much like our Jerry. So hearing him do 3 characters juggling them all, and he had this perfect Rick Drygoods, and it elevated everything. Was really, really fun. I love the entire cast. I'll also say, in terms of people who admire, but when we started going to the theater, Paul Rust was a generation before us, and we would watch these Paul Rust shows, and so being able to sit with him at table reads and being like, you were on last day of school, it was so fun. But that cast, I mean, it's truly like, I mean, it's an all-timer cast. Aparna, Dual Say, they're all, it's Jane, it's just like it's Jenny, I would gladly write for any, like, all of them are just like, it's so
It's
fun.
an embarrassment of riches. It really is. It's awesome. Yeah, it's such a blast.
And that's just the voice cast. I mean, people behind the scenes yourselves, the Molyneux sisters. The whole show, just from top to bottom, is just an A+.
It's stacked. It's a really fun stacked show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thankfully this isn't recorded, because I'll probably cut this, but a question I always want to ask folks from the Great North is, and I'll probably cut this, so feel free to say whatever you want.
Sure.
For folks who won't give the Great North a shot because they think it's Bob's Burgers light. Is there
interesting?
And I'll probably cut this, but this is more for me. What would you say to that? Because we hear that all the time. Like, it's Bob's Burgers in Alaska, and I want Bob's Burgers. I was like, well, get your head out of your ass. This is a good show.
Oh no, that's a great question. I mean, clearly, I mean, I'll say it's to our advantage, which is, it is building up the and Lucy and Wendy, who are part of the voice of Bob's for a long time too. So, I will say, for me, I would say the voice cast is one way I would answer. I just think these are some of the most distinct voice artists out there. And so I would say that. And then I also think, we had sort of touched on this. I would just think also that just like the beauty of the show, I think it's just like, it is just it's a visual, like visually, it's doing some things I don't see on other animated shows, of just like, I was like, oh, there's a awe-inspiring moment in every episode. So that's another way I would.
Yeah, I just realized I asked the question very aggressively, so I'm definitely going to cut this.
No. I think it's a great.
No.
I like Mike. You're getting to the real. I think I love it.
Well,
I love that.
It's a thing, because like we'll post like the weekly schedules on our Instagram page, like, hey, Y and Z are playing blah 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 blah, and people found out Bob's is going on break till May, and everybody lost their collective.
Wow, is that? I didn't know that. Is that right?
Yeah, they're on break until May, and the world ended for a small group of people. And we're like, no, you got to check out the Great North. This is the perfect time to do it. And they're like,
that's great.
No, F this, F that. I want Bob's or nothing. I was like, I can't break it to break
That's
it to you.
So
like,
sweet. That's sweet of you to do it. Well, I appreciate you having the shows back on that is so sweet. And it just shows people are very connected to these characters and these families. But but to me, you really hit on it, Mike, where you're just like, sometimes you'll just see a nature shot and you'll be like, oh, these are artists. I think some of the art of and the nature art is just so cool. Yeah,
I think it's beautiful. Just all the outdoor shots and, like you said, the nature in general.
I
don't know.
There's something very calming about. I think a lot of people feel that way about Bob's too. Yeah, there's something very comforting, and I feel that, having worked on it, I think that that's inherent to both shows, and just in a different way. It's it's a different type of, hopefully a different flavor of that sort of comfort and relaxation.
I'd say if Bob's Burgers is too high octane for you,
yeah.
and you need to you're about to go to bed.
Yeah. If John Benjamin's voice is making your heart rate go up.
Oh my god. Yeah. It's just, at least for fans, it's so frustrating. Because I guess JB and myself, we're kind of in that gray area where we have more knowledge than the average fan does. But we're obviously not part of the show. So we don't want to like white knight him, like, no, they need our help. So we're like, fuck, why won't you just give it the time of day? I guess it's similar to like how people like French fries and I don't, when they're trying to convince me. I'm like, no, I'm not eating the fucking French fries.
Sure.
So maybe
Totally.
it's just a stubbornness that I got to get over. So.
Well, I love that. I also think, there's something kind of fun for me, and I think we're all kind of the same, but I feel like in the 90s when I grew up, there was such a fun badge of just like, I'm watching something that not everyone else is. It was there was something like, I think maybe that is, maybe I'm wrong that that's kind of gone by the wayside, but I feel like it's kind of come back for me where I'm like, oh, I kind of love the stuff that, as everything has kind of become like Marvel films, like, or something like that. There's something about being like, oh no, I'm watching something that people that's kind of come back and is kind of delicious for me as well. But yeah, but we appreciate you, Mike. You guys are so kind.
It's
it's totally, man.
It seems nowadays it's more like, I want this and only this.
Yes.
Like, I can't help you.
Yeah.
But back to the episode. Obviously, Nick, you said way back earlier in the interview that you love horror. Your mummy killing people who aren't using their turn signals in ancient Egypt. Screenplay coming soon. Did your love of horror play any into Minnie Wolf or the Snowman, who kind of on the scarier side?
I think that was. I actually think I believe Matt Lawton had pitched this
Minnie Wolf.
Minnie Wolf. This like just because we needed someone that he could talk to. Like it's kind of one of the traps of the episodes. He's alone, so it's like, how do you kind of get him? So we were trying to avoid the Sato stuff of like, and now I'm going, okay. Even though Will Forte can do it, but so I think so. Matt Lawton pitched that, and then I believe it was the Molinist who had the idea for these snow people, that was one. Is like, it's interesting in watching it where it's like the episode moves pretty quickly at certain points, and so that was like, how do we earn Wolf getting so scared he's jumping off the show? And so I think the Snowman was I believe a Lizzie Wendy idea of like heightening his anxiety and making that more dramatic.
Yeah, them going from this sort of comforting company, and then like just the way the light, like the campfire flickers off of them after he starts getting in his head, that completely flipped. Yeah.
And I'm not sure who deserves credit, but whoever wrote the line, "Why did you build us to feel pain?"
Oh, sure.
Hilarious.
I can't remember.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, that's a great. Yeah, just like, but yeah, but yeah, those were fun moments. Like we watched. My 1-year-old doesn't really get to watch, but he like kind of hung out with us while we did a little like viewing party, and I was like, I wonder if that was going to scare him, but he loved it. He really liked the snow people.
Oh, cool! Did he like that?
He did, yeah. He was very riveted. I mean, again, for a kid who has never maybe seen animation before.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Like, whoa. Yeah. He was very quiet. He just sat crisscross.
That's great.
So the reaction from the fans has been fantastic. You probably haven't seen it, but Talone Moosenback, the Instagram page, he did a review for us. Absolutely loved it. He's over in England, I think. So it's wild that a show about Alaska, a very American show, has made it all the way over there across the sea. And folks there are picking up on it, and they're relating to it, and they absolutely love it. So that goes kudos to not only the animation, the show, but obviously you as the writer. So thank you for that. It's a fantastic episode.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks for sharing that. I didn't realize. I got to check that out. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we kind of wrap up here, are there any shows, animated or not, beyond the Great North that you feel people should be checking out or giving the time of day to?
We're watching Common Side Effects. We were, so that's kind of
we are.
We're talking, but we just love, I think it's just doing some stuff that I don't see much of in animation. And Joe Bennett and that team are just like incredible. So yeah, we
don't know Joe, but we are huge fans of his stuff. We've been following him for it feels like years now. Like he's very generously put a lot of his stuff online, from Scavengers Train to his shorts, and it's awesome to see. Yeah, it's awesome to see a show like that, and him get to do it.
I would check his stuff out on Vimeo too. I think I would check out Joe Bennett on Vimeo for our animation fans. Like, just like check out his like indie work is like really, really impressive.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then Yeah, the only other. I mean, I mean, this is like maybe everyone. I know like Severance is like folks are
Yeah.
really enjoying that. I'm one of those people. Um, and the other show that like I truly love. This is gonna sound like a bit, but I watched this BBC show that I watched through PBS Masterpiece Theater called All Creatures Great and Small.
Okay.
Nice.
It's an impossibly quaint show. It's about a Scottish vet in the 1930s, and he's a fish out of water because he's working in England,
Yeah.
and it is it is maybe my version of like a warm blanket of a show, but it's like the the biggest drama is like the cow is sick, and the cow's always okay.
Do you ever
Um,
do you ever watch
but
The Repair Shop?
no, what's that?
It is a warm blanket of a show.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
takes place in the countryside of somewhere in Europe. Essentially, these people bring in these items that are completely destroyed, whether it's a vase that's fallen over into a million pieces,
Uh,
family heirlooms that they want put back together or working again. They bring it to this place, they fix it up. All they're doing is bringing paintings back to life, or they're fixing toys, or they're putting vases back together. And you hear all
yeah.
these stories about, oh, my mom owned this, and I never thought I'd hear it playing music again. They bring it in, everybody's crying, and it's such a
Oh my God! Wait,
lovely show.
what's it on? What's it on?
They put all their episodes on YouTube.
Oh,
Nice.
great. Okay,
So
gotcha.
the Repair Shop, and they are the most charming people, and they do it for free. They repair everything for free. They don't ask
Oh,
for
whoa.
money. I don't know how it all works, but
Yeah.
it's
Let's not dig into it. We don't want to know if
It's so dark. It turns out it's incredibly dark.
it's like the most fucked up private
It's a
equity
sweatshop.
The Koch brothers. Wait, the Koch brothers are funding?
They don't actually fix it. They just go buy another one and they make it look like it.
BlackRock presents the sweatshop.
Yeah, but
That's great.
lovely
I just
show.
jotted it down. The Dropish. I appreciate that. That's
Yeah,
awesome, man.
if you watch it, it looks like it's in like an old farmhouse. So if you see that, then you're on the right one. If they have American
Okay,
accents, bail, because
Yeah.
Okay.
ain't right.
That's
Yeah.
that ain't right. Okay, got it. Yeah, it's interesting. I think this is it can kind of go both ways, but I think this is true of like when I meet writers and work with writers in the room. Some folks really do go home and want to watch comedy still. And I don't often. I feel like especially when the room is going, I find myself gravitating more towards yeah, BBC, PBS shows that my mom's librarian coworkers watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just a different gear. I know some people like do the same thing with like Ken Burn documentaries or something like that. So
Yeah, it's like the classic a Subway sandwich artist doesn't come home and make a PB&J for himself.
Yeah.
You know, making
yeah,
sandwiches all
yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Like, I don't come home after my job as a paralegal and watch Law and Order or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Just going, no.
that's not how they would do that. They need to file the motion. You can't just come into court. It doesn't make sense. There's no truth in art. But Anthony, Nick, it's been a pleasure. Nick, obviously you guys are on for the second time here. Can't
Great
thank
to
you
be
all
back.
enough.
Thanks
Hopefully,
for having us.
yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, the next episode you guys have coming out, we can pick your brain about that and how
We'd
that
love it.
story came about.
We love it.
But yeah, this has been From the Great North to Wonder Wharf, your unofficial one-stop destination for bento box. Oh, your unofficial but verified one-stop destination for bento box information. That you got to remind that we pay $15 for a reason. As always, I am Mike.
Nick is Nick.
I am. Oh, I thought you were doing a bit where it's like JB is gone.
Oh,
That's what JB.
I should usually tell. Now it's your
I'm
turn.
JB. You know something? Screw it. I'm JB. I'm JB.
From my point of view, my mind went, oh, he's pointing to Nick in my screen.
And that's Nick. That's Anthony. And we will see you all next time. Good night, everybody.
Thanks so much.